transition. So our outline of discussion for today, as I indicated in our first lecture, is that we look out for the sources of change in the marriage and the family institution. So what caused the change? So that is what I mean by the sources of change. Then we will discuss the nature of the change. What has changed in the marriage and the family institution? So we would look at certain issues such as mate selection and marital stability, which we discussed in Sociology 223, the decline of polygyny, the decline of the extended family, and then the implications of a law that was passed by the PNDC in 1981, which is the PNDC Law 111, the Interstate Succession Law. So that will be the order for our discussions this morning. So we will start with a recap of what was done last semester. So last semester, we looked at the definitions for marriage and then the definition for family. And we said that marriage is the basis for forming family. It is the beginnings of all family. And so we would look at marriage, what marriage is, what has changed in the marriage structure of Ghana, and then maybe the implications of that change. So who can help us with the definition of marriage? What is marriage? Just a recap of what we learned last semester. Using Lucy May's definition of marriage.
Hello, madam.
Hello. Yes, go ahead.
Lucy May defined marriage as a union between a man and a woman, such that the children born to the woman are recognized as the image offsprings of both parents, or both the man and the woman.
Okay, thank you. So basically, it is a union between a man and a woman, so that the children that are born are regarded as offspring of the couple. And then we also had a definition of the family. We have Burgess and Locke's definition, and then Elizabeth Colson's definition of the family. And so in whatever form that the family was defined, there are certain basic elements within the family, that they are a group of people who are related by blood, marriage, and adoption. Okay, these elements you find in almost all the definitions of the family, and they may constitute a single household interacting and intercommunicating. Now, when you take the marriage and the family, we find that three main factors have brought about changes in the marriage and the family as we see now. So number one is urbanization. Number 2 is education. And the third is Christianity. So we would see how urbanization, education, and Christianity has brought about changes within the marriage and the family institution as we go along. So when you take marriage and the family, we'll see how education has brought changes within that sector. If you take the family, how has Christianity changed the family? How has Christianity changed marriage? Which aspects of marriage have changed, and which aspects of the family have also changed because of the introduction of Christianity, of marriage, and then of rapid urbanization. So we would start our discussion on marriage. We've already noted the definition of marriage. So I am not going to go into that again. But let's look at some aspects of the Ghanaian marriage and see which of them has changed. Okay, so in 223, we said that marriage, there are certain processes and procedures for a marriage to be regarded as legal, at least in our traditional context as Ghanaians. For a marriage to be recognized as valid, there must be the bride price. So some payments are made to the bride's family. We explained that extensively. The bride is handed over to the bridegroom. There is the marriage ceremony that is performed, and then you have consummation of the marriage. And the consummation changes, or no, the consummation actually seals the marriage. So if that is not done, we cannot say that a marriage has been contracted. So in Ghana, if you don't pay the bride price, the marriage is not valid. The bride must be handed over officially to the groom and his family. The marriage ceremony must be performed and the marriage must be consumed. If any of these is not done, the marriage is not valid. It is not complete, right? So, which of these procedures has changed? Do we see any changes in the procedures and the processes of marriage in Ghana? Can we say that there are any changes or nothing has changed within the marriage and the family institution?
Madam, please, there are changes.
Okay, so where do we see the changes? Please go ahead. Or anybody?
Hello, madam, I'm here.
Okay, so.
I see a change in the marriage ceremony.
Okay, what has
Comparing
changed?
nowadays to the traditional way of getting married. And now the church one has been added, or the
Okay.
court has been added. And then the way the spending too has also increased.
Okay, great. So the ceremony has changed. We have the church wedding, okay, and the court system. And then he was also talking about the the spending, which has also gone up. In fact, the traditional marriage is a complete marriage. It is a marriage that is recognized by the state. So in Ghana, we have three types of marriage. We have the traditional marriage, okay, which is a complete marriage that is recognized by the Constitution, what we call the, what do you call it? Just escaped me. The engagement. Okay, so the engagement actually is not an engagement, but it is a complete marriage recognized by the state. Then you have the marriage by ordinance, which is the church marriage, which is also recognized by the state, or you can go to the courts. These days, people go to the district assemblies to just go and sign the marriage certificate. It is the same marriage certificate that is used in the church, okay? So when the marriage is brought to the church, the state is giving permission or the authority to the church to contract marriages on their behalf. So there are certain facilities that must be licensed by the state if the marriage is going to take place in the church. So the church building itself must be licensed to hold weddings, okay? And then the priest must also be licensed by the state. Now the priest's license is provided by the church. So it's like the church guarantees that this priest can now perform marriages. Okay, so those marriages that people now do, like at event centers or at parks, technically they are not recognized by the state because those parks and event centers have not been licensed to provide such services, right? And then the third type of marriage recognized in Ghana is the Mohammedan or Islamic marriage, right? So you were saying that the marriage ceremony, we have added the church. Technically, what that means is that Ghanaians are marrying twice because the state recognizes the traditional marriage. If you do that and you don't go to church or to the court to sign the papers, you are fine. The state recognizes that. But we see that people marry through the traditional way, and then they also go through the Western form of wedding. So in effect, most people are marrying twice. So the procedures and the processes itself have not changed in name, okay, and essence, but there have been additions. The nature of it have changed, but there are certain items which validate marriages which have not changed. So for instance, amongst the arcans, what validates a marriage is the bottle or 2 bottles of schnapps that are provided. It is that which legitimates marriages. All the other things are additions. So previously they would take a sewing machine a set of panties and underwears and brassiers and a trunk and all those things. Those are just gifts. Those things do not validate the marriage. So upon a divorce, you don't send those things back to the man's family. What validates the marriage is a bottle or 2 bottles of schnapps. So upon divorce, that is what you send back to the guy's family or even to the lady's family if it is the man that is seeking for divorce. So the nature has not changed, but the form in which those marriages change, those marriages are contracted, have changed. Right, so we've talked about the marriage processes, the nature, and we've seen changes. Western forms of marriage, we call the wedding. Unfortunately, we are referring to our own marriage forms as engagement, which is not the case. Right. Now we are moving on to the changes in mate selection, which is another issue in the traditional marriage that was discussed. Okay, so in traditional societies, there were 3 forms of marriages or 3 ways through marriages are contracted. So we have the infant betrothal, then the preferential marriages, and then the marriages that are arranged. So we have arranged marriages, then infant betrothal, and then preferential marriages. And marriage followed a certain biological pattern, especially for girls. So for most girls, marriage happened immediately after their menarche, which is the first menstrual period of the girl. If she lives in a community where the puberty rites are performed, she goes through the puberty rites, and then immediately thereafter, she is given off in marriage. But we realize that in contemporary Ghana, marriages do not follow those procedures and processes any longer. We see that the age at first marriage has increased. And the age at first marriage refers to the first time anybody marries, whether a man or a woman or a boy or a girl. So that is what we refer to as the age at first marriage. So if you look at the GDHS reports, so the GDHS is the Ghana Demographic and Health Survey. It is a survey that is conducted every 5 years to take data on health and reproductive health issues in Ghana. So in 2003, those women who were sampled for the survey, the age at first marriage for most of them was 19.4. It means that averagely in 2003, the Ghanaian woman married for the first time at age 19, 4 months. In 2008, we see an increase marginally, still 19, at a little bit higher up, 19.8. And then in 2014, we see an increase again. So what that means is that women are marrying a little bit late compared to, let's say, a decade ago. And the same goes for men, right? And now, so this is like a pictorial feature of what I just discussed. So now we see that marriage is not being contracted immediately after a girl's menarche. Now the girls are having their menarche earlier than before. Now you have 9 years, 10-year-old girls who are menstruating, and the Constitution of Ghana recognizes them as children and not adults. And so these cannot be given off in marriage. If we were in traditional times, they would have been given off in marriage, right? So we see formal education as one of the reasons why girls are marrying late now. Now by 18, most girls would have finished SSS and are in their first year in the university. And that is pushing the age at first marriage. Even for those who are not acquiring an education after their junior secondary school education or their senior secondary school education, most of them go into apprenticeship. They want to learn hairdressing or dressmaking, or they go into catering, or they are doing something else. And so they are not marrying early like it used to be. So that is the second point. And then thirdly, the legal age at marriage in Ghana is 18. Okay, so you are regarded as an adult when you are 18 years. And that is also the age at which you can vote in national elections. And since children cannot marry, it means that the earliest age that a girl or a boy can marry is age 18. Okay, so 18 you can marry, but you can have sex from age 16. And that is known as the age of consent, the age at which a girl can give consent to have sex. That is age 16, but you cannot marry around that time. You can only marry when you reach age 18. So these are some of the reasons, especially formal education and legal marriage age at 18, which has pushed up the age at first marriage higher up from what it used to be in traditional times. Hey, mute yourself.
No, hey.
Okay. Kate, your hand is up.
Madam, please, can you speak a little about the consummation in the first one you talked about?
Which is the first one?
Where you talked, where you talked
was
about
it's
the
under the
marriage,
marriage ceremony.
yes, the procedures in traditional marriage.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm saying is that the processes for marrying in modern Ghana has not changed. Okay, for a marriage to be legitimated in Ghana, you still have to go through these processes. So you still have to pay the bride price, okay? You still have to hand over the bride to the groom, okay? In some ethnic groups, that is a whole ceremony in itself, especially in northern Ghana, the handing over of the bride to the groom. The groom and his men, okay, would come like by procession, okay, come and take the bride. They'll be drumming and dancing, okay. It's a whole ceremony of itself for some ethnic groups, and take the bride from her father's house to the groom. In those cultures where it is a whole ceremony, if that part of the ceremony is not performed, that marriage is not valid. Like, you have not finished performing the marriage rites. And if all the marriage rites are not performed, you cannot claim legitimacy over the children, okay? So for instance, amongst the Krobos, they intentionally stagger the marriage processes, and you have to complete the marriage payment processes and everything before you can claim legitimacy over the children. So you have to pay the bride price, which differ from ethnic group to ethnic groups. So the accounts is just a bottle or two of schnapps. In the Guru and the Gomba communities, actually you pay kola. Some of them would accept cows or sheep, a number of them. And then you have the marriage ceremony itself, where you have the family from both sides gathering to give away the bride to the groom, okay? The reason why the marriage ceremony itself has to be performed is that those people present serve as witnesses. Mind you, in traditional societies, there were no pen and paper. Everything was oral. People didn't write. So you need witnesses, people to come and witness. And so the whole community, the families are there to witness that marriage ceremony, okay? And then the consummation of the of the marriage is when the bride and the groom would have sex for the first time, okay? And that seals the marriage. So if you go through all the other processes, you pay the bride price, the bride is handed over to the groom, the marriage ceremony is performed, and then the bride and the groom go and sleep in their bedroom, and then the bride refuses to have sex with the groom. That will invalidate the marriage, and it is grounds to call the marriage off, as if nothing has happened at all. Okay, so we are looking at these processes in modern times, okay? And what we're saying is that the processes are still followed, but the nature of it has changed. So yes, people are still demanding the bottle of schnapp, but now you have people who say, I am a Christian and I don't drink alcohol, or in my church, we don't do alcohol. So instead of the 2 bottles of schnapps that the family is demanding, I would pay cash instead. So we realized that we have monetized some aspects of the marriage processes. So people are now paying cash instead of giving, what do you call it? The bottle of schnapp, okay? And then there have been so many additions now. If you have witnessed an engagement or a wedding ceremony in recent times, you see that every time people are adding on to it, okay? And what I'm saying is that all those things are just additions. They don't validate the marriage. What validates the marriage is that, did you offer the bottle of schnapp, or if you want to monetize it, did you bring the money? Was the bride handed over to the groom? Was there a marriage ceremony where at least you had some family members? You see that sometimes people say we don't want a big marriage, just something small. So they will just go with an uncle or an older brother or an auntie, and then they contract the marriage. At least there must be witnesses there, okay? But now we see new additions where we have added the Western form of marriage, which is the weddings. And what I'm saying is that there are 3 forms of marriage recognized by our Constitution: the traditional marriage, the Western form of marriage, which is called the marriage by ordinance. So it can take place in the church or at the courts, and then the Islamic marriage. Okay, but we find that a lot of people go through marriage twice. So we perform the traditional way of marriage, and then we do the Western as well. So I am not too sure where you didn't get the explanation. So that is what I explained earlier on. Okay, patience. Patience, ask your question. Okay, your hand is down. If you are.
I'm asking. Madam.
Yes.
I'm asking. Please, I didn't get the age at first marriage.
Which aspect?
The post-colonial and contemporary Ghana age at first marriage.
Okay, so in 223, we said that the age at first marriage occurred immediately after menstruation. Okay, so there was no chronological age attached to when girls married. It was rather attached to the biological changes that occurred in their bodies, which is the menstruation. So if you menstruate at age 15, you go through the bride price and then you marry. If you menstruate at age 16, you go through the puberty rites and then you marry. And in traditional times, girls did not menstruate early. They menstruated between 14 to 16 years, okay? So by between 14 to 16 years, you have a lot of girls menstruating, and then they will be given off in marriage, right? But in the post-colonial, we are referring to when colonialism ended, okay? And then the modern Ghana that we find ourselves in. And we're saying that in modern Ghana, marriages do not follow the biological patterns of the girls, but we rather see that the first age at which girls and boys married has increased because of certain changes we have observed. I've mentioned education, the constitution, and then the apprenticeship. Okay, so instead of girls marrying immediately after their menstruation, now the constitution says that you cannot marry off a girl who is less than 18 years old because she is a child. Okay, the same thing applies to boys, even though the focus is more on girls. So first, the constitution has given a certain age at which girls can marry, which is age 18. So that is one. And then two, a lot of girls and boys are also acquiring education. I don't know your ages, but I can guess that at level 200, most of you would be around age 18 and 19. Am I correct? Hello?
Yes, madam.
Lady.
Yes.
Yes, madam.
Yeah.
Yes, so most of you are within 18 and 19, at most 20, thereabout, right?
Yes.
But none of you is married. Is there any married person in your class? Hello? Pardon? Who is married?
Some are married.
Some are married.
Kojo Hagan.
Yes.
Rachel is married.
Kojo Hagan is married.
Okay.
Someone is married.
So at least
Some are married. Though.
some are
Some are
married.
married.
Well, at least
Madam,
we have
Some are
one.
married
majority are
with
married.
children.
Okay,
Who are
so
married
okay.
with children? Kojo Hagan.
Yes.
Children.
That's
Regan and
fine.
Rachel are married. They have
Okay.
3 children.
That's fine.
Someone has six. Madam, it's not easy.
So what I'm saying is that about 90% of students at the University of Ghana from level 100 to level 400 are not married. And if you talk to a lot of the girls, okay, so there are ladies here. So why aren't you married? At least all of you are above the legal age of marriage. But most of you are not married. And most of you will tell me that you want to complete your university education before you marry. Okay. And the boys, most of them are going to say, apart from completing their education, they want to, they will do their national service, which is 1 year. So all of you are going to spend 1 whole year doing nothing, just doing national service, okay? Then after national service, most people are going to start looking for employment, okay? And for the boys, most will look for employment. They would try and get their own accommodation because you cannot marry and bring your husband, your wife to your father's house. You must have your own accommodation. People are going to buy living room furniture. Some will even add that they want to have a car, buy their own small car before they marry. So if you are adding all the years that you are going to look for employment and then look for your own place, get money to furnish the place, buy a bed, you cannot put your wife on like the student bed that you are sleeping on. At least you need a double bed or something, okay? And so by the time you have achieved all the goals you set for yourself, it will be around 25, 26 for the men. Okay, and for the ladies, the same thing applies to them. Most of them are going to look for a job, and then some are going to wait for Mr. Right to come, by which time they would be 22, 23, going to 24. Okay, so these factors have added on more years at which boys, or no, at which men and women would say that now I am ready for marriage, and so I want to marry. So these things have increased the age at first marriage. And I have explained that the age at first married is the age at which an individual marries for the very first time in their lives. So people can marry, divorce, and remarry and all that. But we're looking at the age at first marriage, the very first time. Because when we are looking at fertility and people's reproductive health issues, are we looking at when a conscious effort is made to start procreation? And normally it is when people are married. So, so that is what I have explained, that in traditional times, a girl will just menstruate and then parents start looking for a suitor for her and she is given off in marriage. In recent times, that is not the case. Right. Ifya.
Madam, please, I wanted to ask, in normal times, as in present times, in present times, sex has been normalized. And you said in an earlier explanation that in traditional marriage, sex consummates the marriage.
Yes.
And I wanted to know that in time, like in present times, that sex has been normalized, and now people don't really wait outside the couple's door to check if the girl was a virgin and stuff. Can it be considered a change? And if it's a change, where does it fall under the sources of change?
Okay, so you have to answer that question. Is there a change where sex has been normalized? So to the whole class, is that a change? If you say sex has been normalized, what do you mean? Can somebody explain? Or if you want to explain yourself.
In present times, like everybody is, having sex. So like before marriage. And like most people, not everybody, sorry, most people are having sex before marriage.
Okay.
And in olden times, it was a necessity that the lady had to be a virgin before marriage. It was part of the requirements. But in present times, where most ladies and most male have indulged in premarital sex, it's like, it's now, I feel it's normalized. So
that is relative. If you say it's normalized, that is relative. But you are also right that in traditional times, sex only took place in marriage. You couldn't have premarital sex. So you remember the snake-infested ponds that the girls going through the initiation, that is the puberty rites, they have to take a bath in the pond, okay, as a sign of their purity, okay? But these days, people are having sex outside marriage, and it is pretty normal, okay? But that does not negate the fact that sex is important in marriage. In fact, non-consummation of the marriage, or if there is no sex in the marriage, that is still a ground for divorce. So if you are seeking for a divorce and you go to the court and you tell the court that you haven't seen your husband or your wife for 2 years now, meaning that 2 years now you have not had any sex. You are just living like brothers and sisters. And so you want a divorce. The court would grant the divorce. So it is still important in marriage. The change is that sex is now occurring outside marriage, very frequent outside marriage. And most people also do not insist on the virginity of girls. That does not mean that there are not people who do not insist on virginity. In fact, a lot of ethnic groups, especially those who belong to the Islamic religion, insist on virginity before marriage. And even some Christians, okay, insist and then encourage their girls to remain virgin. In fact, in Christianity, having sex outside marriage is a sin, even though a lot of people do it. But it is something that is frowned upon within Christian circles. So the liberalization of sex is real. Angelina.
Yes, madam, good morning. Okay, so madam, can we say this happened because of modernization and urbanization, whereby those days—
What happened, please?
This sex before marriage thing.
Okay.
Because those days where women are only meant for domestic purposes, okay, whereby if you get married as a virgin, you bring respect to your family, like you're regarded as a blessing, and you are being taken care of. As you don't work, yours is just to take care of the house.
Yes.
So with that, many parents of the bride insist on it so that their pride will not be taken away.
Exactly.
You know, but now many people are not, because school has become something of that has come to stay, that you don't even have time checking that, because you are really busy trying to make yourself, get yourself worth, make yourself things that will not even make a man look at you that you are not a virgin, so I can't respect you, I can't take care of you. You are also making what it takes to take care of your own self. So some people are just taking it, if I can be able to do things on my own, this a man cannot say, if I'm not a virgin, he cannot take care of me. So it's just regarded as a normal thing, which in a way is bad. But those our forefathers knew that maybe after you become, like, you have your first period, maybe you have your feelings and all those stuff, so immediately you are done, they give you out to marry. But now if you have your first period and you have, like, you're having feelings, going out with other opposite sex, you know, your parents are not even watching you, what is happening. So we are just left out in the open like that. So it's a lot of things to me though, and modernization is a key.
Yes,
factor.
yes, that's very true. That is very true. You have hit the nail right on its head. You know, if you look at the human development, adolescents begin to experience a lot of changes in their bodies. The hormones change. They have a lot of estrogens in the woman's body that begins to increase. The testosterone, which is the male hormones, also begin to increase. And in fact, boys going through puberty would experience what They call it wetness. So the boys wake up in the night and they see that they have an erection and also an ejaculation of semen, which is perfectly normal. Okay, so in those days, within that period, you are just giving off in marriage, okay, and you start your sexual experience there and then. But now, girls would menstruate at age 9, 10, okay, or even 11. They have an increased level of hormones. The same applies to the male, but you are not expected to have sex until you marry, which is torturous maybe for some people. Yes, but the liberalization of sex actually happened in the US. It was part of the civil rights movement where homosexuals and feminists and Blacks, everybody was fighting for their rights, and people fought for the liberalization of sex, the fact that they should be allowed to have sex. So women at that time in the 1960s and 70s would walk around without brassiers, without panties. People were just having indiscriminate sex. They just wanted to experience their bodies. And since we live in a global world, we have also experienced that modernization. Thereby making sex, very liberal. People are having sex outside of marriage. But the thing is, you just don't have to be caught, okay? So if you're a girl, don't get pregnant. If you get pregnant, and everybody knows that you are having sex. If you don't know, get pregnant, yes, you are having sex, but the evidence is not there. So the pregnancy is like the evidence that people are having sex. Anyway, so let's move on. We spent too much time here. So we are still on mate selection. So let me just run through this. So we've talked about the age at first marriage, which has increased, which is one of the changes in mate selection. So please note that. And then the reasons for the increase in age at first marriage. That is what we have discussed. The second change in mate selection is the diminishing role of parents in the choice of marriage partners. So now parents are no longer choosing marriage partners for their children, except in some few cases. Maybe not in Ghana, but if you go to Pakistan, to India, and to those countries, parents still have a huge say in whom their children marry. In India, it is women who go out to marry. So parents will go and look for a groom for their daughter and then come and pay the dowry for the girl. But in Ghana, it has largely gone down. However, parents must approve of the choice of partners. So you bring your marriage partner, and the first question is, who is he? Where does he come from? What work does he do? What church does he attend? And those kind of questions. So parents must approve. Elizabeth.
Yes, madam. Madam, please, in India, that the woman marries the man. Do the women still cater for the home after they are married?
Of course. You have to go and look for a husband, and you tell the husband that I'll give you a motorbike for your dowry. And the man will say, I don't like a motorbike, I want a car. Then you provide the car. So here the men, like, just as in Ghana, the family of the girl gives a long list to the groom to go and provide those things. In India, the same thing. The men indicate what they want. They determine what they want. And then the woman would have to go and find those things. So that's why in India, they don't, the status of women is very low. A lot of people kill their infant daughters because they are actually a liability. A lot of families are poor, and so they have to sell most of the things that they have just to marry for one daughter. And it doesn't increase the status of women in India, even though they provide the dowry. Their situation is more precarious than us, even in Ghana, where the men pay the bride price. Okay, so the diminishing role of parents in marriage is another change in the marriage market. Sorry, another change in the mate selection. Okay, and now another change is that we have marriage markets, meaning people are marrying a lot outside their ethnic group because of the expansion of the marriage market. If you do sociology of the family, one of the theories of marriage is proximity. You normally marry people you interact with, people you are close with, okay? So if you are in the university, there is a high chance that you are going to pick somebody from the university as your partner. If you don't pick a mate from the university, when you go out to do your national service, the likelihood is that you are going to pick people from your network. If you attend church, the likelihood is that you're going to pick somebody from within the church. If you go for parties, you are going to meet a lot of people. So now the avenues for people to interact and meet others outside their ethnic groups is very wide. And you have a large marriage market, schools, churches, parties, funerals. You know, people go for funerals, they are so dressed up. That is where they go and meet their marriage partners. Or even in the trotro, you know, where you stand and take your trotro every day to work or to school. You may meet somebody there who may become your marriage partner, or even in the neighborhood where you live. So if you live in Accra and you are not a Ga, and you live at some place, let's say Dansuman, where you have people from other ethnic groups, or you live at Adenta, Medina, chances are that you are going to meet people outside of your marriage group. And the consequence of that is the increase in inter-ethnic marriages. So now you see a Ga married to an Ewe, which is very common because they are neighbors. The Dangbes married to Ewes. You see Fantis married to a Dagomba, and Ashanti married to a Fanti, you know, but these are like traditional enemies because of the inter-ethnic wars in traditional times. The Fantis used to war against the Ashantis a lot, but these days we have a lot of inter-ethnic marriages due to urbanization. You know, urban centers. Accra is now sprawling. It's gone beyond the borders of the greater Accra region to eastern region, north, south, east, and west. Okay, so now you have the marriage market increasing. Okay, Kate.
Madam, please, I want to ask, since there is a decline in the parental role in mate selection, so can it be said that the extended family system nowadays have nothing to do at all with marriage regarding couples?
Yes, to the extent of the choice of a marriage partner, they don't play any role. But when you are certain that you want to marry, the Ebusuapenyi and his people will just come and sit there and receive the bride or the groom on behalf of the married of the family. And that is where their role ends.
But please, I want to ask again, if like how they don't like help in the mate selection, does it mean that these marriages won't be stable than earlier before, like a decade ago?
And that is the subject of research. So we would come to the stability of marriages. And in fact, that is one theory people have propounded, that the rise in divorce is due to the increase in inter-ethnic marriages. Okay, but if you are a researcher, you should be able to isolate a lot of things to be able to say that, yes, the rise in divorce is as a result of inter-ethnic marriages, okay? Because there are so many other things that contribute to a divorce. So the fact that an Igbe man is married to a Ga and they have divorced does not mean that the ethnic groups were not compatible. Maybe there are other issues. So if you're a researcher, you have to isolate other issues, such as age, the age when the couple are married. In fact, research has shown that people who marry younger, okay, tend to divorce than people who marry when they are older. So that may be a cause for the divorce. So yes, it is a theory that has been propounded. All right. All right, unmute yourself and ask your question. Hello? All right, go ahead. Oh, you are speaking, but I can't hear you. Can you type your question in the chat? I can see your microphone icon moving, but
Madam.
Yes.
Madam.
I can hear you now. Hello?
Madam, please, I didn't get the new marriage market well. Madam.
The new marriage market refers to the avenues or the places where people are likely to meet their marriage partners. Okay, so I was saying that in traditional times, because people didn't move a lot, you are likely to marry people from within your ethnic group and even from your village. So you have reached puberty, you have had your puberty rights. Your parents just go to the next compound, to Kodwe Mensah's house, and get his son for you to marry. But now, by the time you have reached marriage, you are in a university now, and you are meeting Gideon, and you are meeting Isaac, and you are meeting a whole lot of people outside your own village. So the university becomes the marriage market. So these are the markets. It's like you've gone to the market. So these are places where people converge in large numbers and where people are likely to meet other people and maybe get into relationship with them. And I said that the theory of marriage, one of them is proximity, that people tend to marry those they are close to, those they interact with frequently. So that is the marriage market. Okay, so our time is moving fast. So let me move on. Right. So we've talked about mate selection, which has changed. Now we're talking about polygyny. That is a man marrying more than one wife. So in Ghana, we don't have polyandry, so we can only talk about polygyny. And we realize that polygynous relationships is declining in Ghana. So we're using the GDHS report again, okay? And in the report, they asked women whether they had, in Ghana, we call them rivals, but whether they had co-wives, okay, whether there are co-wives in the relationships. So in 1998, 23% of women said, yes, there are other co-wives, 2003, 2008. So we see the decline in 2008, and then in 2016, so 16% of women said there were other co-wives. But you see that the men, only 9% of the men in 2008 admitted that they had more than one wife. And then in 2014, we had 7% of men admitting that they had more than one wife. So polygyny, which used to be a feature in marriage in traditional Ghana, is changing. It is declining. Now there is a rise in monogamous marriages. And some of the reasons for the decline of polygyny is conversion to Christianity. You know, the church doctrine teaches monogamy, one man, one wife. In most churches, if you have two wives, you can't go for communion. You are not regarded as a full member of the church. Even if you're a woman and you are in a polygynous marriage, your husband has married another wife. In some churches, you, the woman who didn't ask the man to go and marry, you cannot go for communion. So Christianity teaches against that. And then you have urbanization and the rising standard of living. The standard of living is so high, people cannot maintain two wives. Imagine you are in Accra, living at Adenta, in your chamber and hall, and you want to marry two wives. Where are you going to put them? Okay, where are you going to put the two women? Unless you have money to rent separate accommodations for them. So that is deterring people from marrying multiple wives. And in fact, that has also contributed to the liberalization of sex. Now people are getting free sex. Okay, they are having side chicks and all that. So it's not too important marrying if you can have the sex outside marriage anyway. Okay, and now there are new sources of prestige. At first, if you had more wives and more children, your prestige was high. It showed that you had more money. But now there are other sources of prestige. People are driving very expensive cars. If you can go and buy Bugatti, you know, your prestige will go very high. You don't have to marry two wives. And in fact, those people, they'll have a lot of side chicks, a lot of girlfriends outside marriage. And so they don't need to marry more than one wife. Okay, so one other change note is the decline in polygyny. That has changed. Okay, so I've talked about this already. And now we're talking about divorce, the stability of marriages. And so these are the reasons for the increase in divorce that we see now. Please note that we are not saying that in traditional times, people didn't divorce their husbands. They did, but it was not very common. Okay, now divorce is very common. And some of the reasons is the greater independence of women due to education. In traditional times, one of the reasons why women married was for men to take care of them, to provide them with that security, that we have a man who is providing for your needs, buying clothes for you, providing you with food and everything. But now, most women, due to education, can fend for themselves. They are not dependent on men, okay? And so they are at liberty to even initiate divorce. So for instance, if you live in an abusive relationship, most women who are economically independent will leave those relationships. We find out that women who stay in abusive relationships are those who depend on their husbands for their sustenance. Okay. Who will take care of my children if I leave this marriage? Even going to report the abuse to DOPSU, they will not go because they are thinking about who will take care of their children when the man is in prison. So that is one. And then two, weakening religious and cultural supervision. So you remember the Golomagba and all those things. Okay. And then the traditional forms of solving marital disputes. These days, you are in Kumasi, your parents are in Accra, and you are not happy with your marriage. Some people will pack their bags out of the house even before informing their parents about it. And the people you are living with are not family members. So that cultural supervision is not there. And that religious hold on marital couples is also weakening. So I'm talking about traditional religion here. In traditional times, we talked about the Golomagba. If you go out and you engage in extramarital affairs, you may not even be able to enter your husband's house. You will be found out if the Fiatekle and the Golomagba are working. But these days, we don't have that traditional religion. That puts fear into people, that a married woman does not do that. Or even if you're a married man, there are certain things you don't do. You don't have those cultural constraints. Okay. And then thirdly is that there is a changing attitude towards divorce. It used to be stigmatized, but these days people have liberal views about divorce. Yeah, the marriage didn't work. It's not a big deal, and they are off. And so all of these things are contributing to divorce in modern marriages. And then I have already touched on the rise in inter-ethnic marriages. This has not been proven. You need very rigorous research, sampling various marriages or divorces, holding other things constant, as the economists will say. And then if you are able to isolate inter-ethnic nature of the marriage as the cause for the divorce, then you can say that inter-ethnic marriages are less stable, but that is debatable. So that's why you have the star over there. Okay, And then there are other views that says that marriages are more stable in urban conditions than in rural areas. Okay, so what it means is that in urban areas where people do not have family available, their marriage partners become their only family. And so you find that most marriages in urban centers are more stable. In fact, I was doing some research in some rural areas, Agona, Swedro area, and you find out that most people are cohabiting and not marriage. So cohabiting means that they have not gone through the formal processes of marriage. They are just living together as husband and wife. And it is acceptable even in the villages and in the rural areas, okay? So when you go and you speak to them, they will say, my husband or this person's husband. But when you ask, has your husband performed the marriage rites? And then they say no. In that case, if there is any dispute, that marriage is easily dissolved than in the urban areas where both couple have made a lot of investments, okay? Emotional investments, people are building together, people are buying cars together, people are having joint accounts, okay? And then you say you want a divorce. How are you going to divide all these things? Yes, you can divide all of them, but it is emotionally draining. So you find out that in the urban centers, marriages are more stable than in the villages. They don't have a lot of investments together. They may be living in family homes. They just have the farms and the land belongs to the men anyway. So if there is divorce, the woman will just have to move out and to her family home. And then that ends the marriage. So it is easier in the rural areas to end marriage than in the urban areas. Right, so that is the end on the first part of the marriage and the family. We've spent so much time on the marriage alone. Any question on the marriage, the changes that have occurred in the marriage? So we're saying that there are changes in mate selection. So there are some points beneath it. You check that. There are changes in polygynous marriages. There are changes in the stability of marriages. And then there are the points underneath those things. So when you are reading your notes or revising, look at the points. So you take marriage, the marriage contract, age at first marriage, and then you take the polygynous marriages, then you take the dissolution of marriage, and look at the points underneath. Any question, please? Okay, so somebody says, after breakup, who does the children belong to? If it is a matrilineal marriage, the children belong to the woman. If it is a patrilineal marriage, the children belong to the man when there is a divorce. And sometimes the age of the children are also taken into consideration. If the children are younger, like beneath 5 years, they are given to the woman, even in patrilineal societies. And when the children are a bit older, the the man would come for the children. But in matrilineal societies, it doesn't matter the ages of the children. They belong to the mother and her family.
Madam,
Yes.
please, now that we have inter-ethnic marriages, when there's a divorce, like for instance, an ethnic group that is practicing the patrilineal system and then another ethnic group that is practicing the matrilineal system, when they come together, the children are in, is it bilineal, blah, blah, blah. Sorry, I don't really know the word well. But then when there's a divorce, and the children are too young to decide which family member they want to go to, in that case, what happens? And isn't there a change now?
So in that case, that's why I said that the age of the children is also taken into consideration. So let's say the husband is a Ga, patrilineal, and so the children automatically belongs to him. And the mother is a Fanti, matrilineal, and so the children automatically belong to the woman. The parents would have to come to a certain agreement of how to take custody of the children. But the man cannot unilaterally say that I am a Ga, so the children belong to me, so I am taking the children. And the woman also cannot say that I am a Fanti, I am a matrilineal, so the children belong to me. They have to come to an agreement. But if the children are younger, as I have explained, normally, even when you go to the courts, the children are given to the woman to take care of them until they are older. Okay, even then, now there are changes. Some men can go to court and say that my ex-wife is not fit to take care of the children because of ABCD. She is an alcoholic, she doesn't work, she doesn't do this, she's that. And so even though the children are young, I want to take custody of the children. So if you want to decide by traditional means, then you use the lineage system, but you can also take it to the court for the court to decide. And the court will make its decision based on evidence. Who is fit, who is best fit to take care of the children, who is not fit, who is working, who is not working, and all that.
Okay.
Okay, so there is a question that I should explain the weakening of religious and cultural supervision. So in 223 on the family, we're saying that there are certain religious, and here we're looking at the traditional religion and cultural constraints, which kept married couples together, okay? But now you have the influx of Christianity, okay? People belonging to other religions, people moving away from their traditional homes. And so they do not have those cultural constraints. And I gave the example of Golomagba and Fiatekli, which are some religious rights, if I should put it that way, amongst the Ewes, where a woman who engages in extramarital affair is caught in the act. So these things put a constraint on women, especially if they wanted to engage in extramarital affairs, okay? But now because people have moved away from their traditional homes, they are living in urban centers. They don't believe in these things any longer. And the men, or some men also, do not take advantage of these cultural issues to try and put their marriages together. So you don't have, so what I mean by the cultural is that the family or the extended family that acted as a buffer and also mediated in marriage is no longer available. Their influence has weakened. Okay, if you were living in your village and you were married and you are beating your wife, everybody will hear about it. Okay, because it's a small village. Everybody knows everybody, as we say. Everybody knows what is going on in other people's homes. You have the extended family who would come in and mediate. These are cultural constraints. But in modern Ghana, where people are living in urban centers, far away from their traditional homes, you don't have the benefit of the extended family or the cultural constraints. You know, in the traditional setting, when you do something, people will tell you, as a married woman, you don't do that. A married woman does not dress like this. A married woman does not talk like this. A married woman does not do this. A married woman does not do that. Okay, so there is always that constraint. But if you are an Accra and you decide to walk with your head upside down, and as a married woman, wear a very short skirt or shorts, walking around, nobody will say anything to you. Okay, maybe your husband does not like it, but nobody will say anything. In fact, some people will applaud you and say, "Mommy, wait your dress, you know, she's a very fashionable woman." And your husband may divorce you based on that. But if you were in a traditional setup, okay, you would have the whole village telling you to behave like a married woman or behave like a married man. And so there are these constraints that protect marriages, but you don't have that in urban centers. Okay, so let me move on. We have some few minutes to the family, so I'm just going to rush through. So one of the changes that we've seen in the extended family, I've mentioned it, but now we are doing it formally, is the nucleation of the family. That is, the extended family is declining. The form, the nature, and even the influence of the extended family is declining in favor of the, how do I get this thing off? Is declining in favor of the nuclear family. Okay, so when we use the extended family, we use it in two forms. The first is that you had people living together under one roof or closer together. That is declining. And then you have people who have obligations towards others. So you are expected to take care of other family members. People can just walk to your house without informing you ahead of time. So you are there and your mother has come and is coming to visit, or your uncle or your brother or your cousin has come and is coming to visit and doesn't inform you. That is very normal. But these days, you cannot just walk into anybody's home, even if you are family. So the influence of the extended family is has declined. And then the authority that the extended family had has also declined drastically. Now the Busuapenyin cannot determine whom to marry. In fact, people even marry without informing their Busuapenyin. The only time they inform the Busuapeni is when there is a funeral and they are going to the village for the burial. That is the only time most people contact their Busuapeni. But apart from that, a lot of the things about extended family has changed. They don't live together any longer. There are some cousins that you would never meet because they are living somewhere, okay, and you don't interact so much. And what that means is that the support that the extended family used to provide for its members has declined, okay? Previously, the whole family would contribute and sponsor one person to go to school. They will use the cocoa money, okay, to sponsor one person. But these days, that is not the case. People are not helping other family members. They themselves have their own needs. And so they are not able to help others, okay? And the result is that we see a lot of children on the streets, okay, with no place to go. Previously, if a father died, another father replaced, the whole family would contribute to take care of the orphans. But this has declined drastically. Right, so the implications of the decline of the extended family is that the support that was given to the vulnerable in the family is no longer available. Children without parents are left to fend for themselves. People who need help to further their education are just left to themselves. The family used to provide caring for the sick. So a grand auntie or uncle is sick, and there is always somebody there to take care of them. But that is not the case these days. So there are a lot of elderly people living alone because their children are in the urban centers and don't have anybody to take care of them. Now, what is very common is associational ties. Associational ties are ties amongst people who are not family. So your associates. So people have what they are now calling my best friend, and their best friends know more about them than their family members. People have formed ties with their colleagues at work, and they are providing them with the support, the emotional and the material support. People are very close to their church members. People are very close, okay, to their neighbors. So now you have a lot of associational ties than family ties. A lot of people have friends, associates, colleagues, church members, and all that, but they don't know any of their extended family members, which is now a feature in our family relationships. The only thing is that we haven't gotten to the level of the Western society. So the Western society, somebody can tell you that I don't have a family. My parents are dead and I am an only child, so I don't have a family. That does not happen in Ghana. Everybody has a family. Even if you are an only child and your parents are dead, somebody will show up. An uncle, an auntie, you will find somebody within your family whom you can call family. but their influence and authority that they wielded has declined. They no longer contribute to the economic welfare of people. So there is a decline there. Right. The last item we are looking at is the changes in the inheritance system. And this came about as a result of the introduction of PNDC Law 111, when the PNDC government under Jerry Rawlings introduced this law. And so this law made it possible for wives and children to inherit their parents' and husbands' property. In traditional times, especially in matrilineal societies, when a woman loses the husband, the family takes over everything. And in fact, we've said that inheritance and succession is through the female line. So when your husband dies, everything goes to his family. And then the woman, because she belongs to her own family, would also have to go back to her family. Unlike in patrilineal societies, especially amongst the northern ethnic groups, where when you marry, you are assimilated, you become a full member of your husband's family. In that case, when the husband dies, the husband's family would take care of the wife and the children. You are part of them, you are their property. So you cannot go back to your family. But in the matrilineal societies, you are just married. You don't belong to your husband's family. And so when he dies, the family takes everything, and the woman is expected to go back to her own family. And in most cases, they are left destitute because whatever they toiled to do with their husbands, they are denied an inheritance. And the children as well. The children belong to their mother's family. So they also have to go to their mother's family, and they don't have a claim to any of their father's property. So what this law did was that it put a stop to the maltreatment of women and children, especially when a man dies without a will. Okay. The only time that this law applies is when a person dies without a will. So that is the meaning of the intestate. If a person dies and leaves a will, the property will be shared according to the tenets of the will. But if there is no will, then PNDC Law 111 will apply. And then this formula would be used. So the houses and the chattels, if there are any, will go to the spouse, and then the rest of the property would be shared according to the formula provided in the law. So 3/16 to the surviving spouse, 9/16 to the surviving child, or if there are children, 1/8 to a surviving parent, if there is any, and then 1/8 in accordance with the customary law. So this is how the property of a man who dies without a will was shared. There are now changes in the PNDC Law 111. It has been amended slightly, and now it includes all the children that the man ever had. Okay, any question? So the implications I've already explained. People are now able to inherit their fathers and their mothers, as the case may be. and their husband's property when they die without leaving a will. Interestingly, a lot of Ghanaians don't like writing a will. They think that when they write, they will die. So they don't write it. Okay, any questions? So we've looked at the changes that have occurred in the marriage and the family. And the age at first marriage has changed. That is when people are choosing their marriage partners. Polygyny has changed. Divorce has gone up. We looked at the reasons for the divorce. We looked at the declining nature of the extended family, and then the introduction of the PLC Law 111. So next week, no, not next week, tomorrow, Dr. Obeng will discuss rural-urban migration with the Thursday class. So please, class rep, you have sent me an email, but if you have a Gmail account, let me have it so that I can make the recordings available to you for all transfer to your mates. Okay, so some people have lectures now. Any questions for me before we leave? If you have any question, you can also just send me an email or put it in the forum as a question. I'm sure your colleagues would also help in answering any question that you may have. And because we don't have tutors, there won't be any tutorials. Okay. Yes, Kate, your hand is up.
Madam, please, I want to ask whether you believe that marriages in contemporary times are more stable than the traditional times.
I didn't say that marriage in contemporary times are more stable. What I was saying is that marriages in urban centers, the cities and the towns, are more stable than marriages in the rural areas. But marriages in traditional times were more stable than marriages in modern times. You understand? So in traditional times, the marriages were more stable than now. But that is not to say that there were no divorce in traditional times. In fact, research has shown that Akan women, okay, tended to divorce more than women from other ethnic groups in traditional times. But if you combine the whole of the other ethnic groups, marriages in traditional times were more stable than now. But if we are doing a rural-urban analysis, marriages in urban areas are more stable than in the rural areas. In the urban areas, because of the rise in what do you call it, the standard of living and how marriages are contracted. Okay, I talked about the investments that people make, and also in the urban centers, the stigma is a little bit higher than in rural areas, because in urban centers, people go to church, they have colleagues, and they are shy that their colleagues will know that they are divorcees. But in the rural areas, most of them have not gone through the marriage rites in the first place. So there is no stigma when the marriage ends in divorce. So I think that is what I said.
Okay, Madam, please, as you said earlier that you can, how Akan women attend to more divorces than other ethnic groups. So can it be said that because the account groups mostly practice the matrilineal system, that's why we find this kind of divorces.
Exactly, because the woman does not belong to the husband's family, unlike the northern ethnic groups like the Dagombes and the Mampusis and the Frafres. There, when you marry, you belong to the husband's family. You are part of their family. Okay. And because of the bride payment, like people are paying cows. So imagine that your father asks for 10 cows and you want a divorce. Your father would have to return those 10 cows. Meanwhile, your father has used the cows to marry for your brother. So how are you going to leave the marriage? Okay, but in Akan, what legitimated a marriage is that just that one bottle of schnapp, which is easy to acquire. So if I want divorce, I just take that bottle of schnapp, just go to my husband's father or mother and say that I am fed up with your son, I don't want to marry again. So here is your bottle of schnapp. And then they will go call for a meeting and ask you if you insist that you want to leave the marriage. That is fine. In fact, there are other researches that have shown that Akan people looked at marriage very suspiciously. They were very suspicious of marriage. If you are a husband or a wife and you show signs that you are more committed to your spouse, your family would begin to murmur. Okay, and they will begin to tell you that okay, if you are a man, they will say that your husband, your wife has done some juju against you. That is why you love your wife so much. In fact, they like the marriage, but they don't expect that you would raise the family above the marriage. Okay, if you put your marriage above the family within Akan, you will face a lot of opposition. The family is always supreme. You belong to us, not the man. So for Akan women, it was very easy for them to divorce. I was listening to President Kufuor. I'll look for the tape and forwarded it to you. He says his mother married, I think, 3 or 4 men. And it was very common. Okay, so those of you who want to leave, you can leave the class. Okay, so the class has ended. So we shall meet next week.
Thank you.
Mary Magdalene, just send me a hi on my phone with your email address. I can't find it in the chat.